1000 Watts est une marque immobilière leader aux États-Unis, une agence de marketing qui a pour clients des centaines d'agences et de sociétés technologiques. Brian Boero va partager avec vous ses idées, des exemples, mais aussi les meilleures pratiques pour vous permettre de créer une grande marque immobilière dans un monde de plus en plus digital. Je vous demande d'accueillir comme il se doit Brian Boero, co-founder et managing partner de 1000 Watts.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Brian Boero. The first thing you'll notice about me is that I don't speak French. I apologize for that. I live in Oakland, which is very near San Francisco, and I'm going to try to speak slowly so the translator can keep up with me. And please bear with me. It's a real pleasure and an honor to be here with you this morning. So a little bit about me, as was mentioned. I run a brand and marketing agency in the United States, and we work with many technology companies and real estate companies in the United States, including some brands that operate here in France. So Sotheby's International Realty is a client of ours. We've done work with Remax. We've done work with Coldwell Banker. So we understand real estate and we understand brands. And what I'm going to do today is to share some of my thoughts on how to build a real estate brand successfully, and in particular, how to do that in the online world. Because many of you may have established and respected brands, but are still challenged to figure out how to deal with everything in the rapidly moving world of the internet and mobile devices and everything that's happening so quickly. So I'm going to share with you some general principles about brands and then 8 things that I suggest you think about as you go about building your brand online. So I woke up this morning, first of all. I need to get this off my chest. I woke up this morning and saw this and was shocked. And I don't know how to explain it to you. And I don't know what it means. But I think quite possibly I'm in the market now for an apartment in Paris. So maybe one of you can help me with that. Okay, let's get to it. What is a brand? What is a brand? Well, a brand is much more than a logo. We all recognize the Apple logo. But a brand is much more than just a logo. So a brand is a feeling and an experience. In my taxi this morning, I drove by the Apple store here in Paris, and it's the same way that it is in the United States. It's a big, glassy, elegant, high-tech environment filled with devices that we lust after. Shiny steel, shiny glass, that feeling we have when we touch the button, that feeling we have when we open the new app, that feeling we have when we communicate with somebody in a new way. That's the Apple brand, that feeling and that experience. There's another brand that we all know. Well, BMW is more than just a logo, certainly. BMW is what we feel when we sit inside that car and we turn on the ignition and we feel the exhilaration. A brand is a feeling. A brand is an experience. So I'm going to talk a little bit about logos here, but what I'm trying to communicate is that a brand is much more than just your logo, your visual identity. So in the real estate world, you think about your brand quite a lot. As I've spent time in Paris here over the last couple of days, I see many real estate offices that look like this. They're very well kept, they're nice, the properties are displayed in the window beautifully. Many of them, if you walk into them as I have, they're very lovely places to be. And that's because you take care of your brand experience in the physical world. You put a lot of thought into how your brand experience is when somebody, a client or a prospective client, walks into your office. You think a lot about that. You put a lot of money into that. Similarly, you think about your interaction with human beings, other people, in the interpersonal world. So as you present yourself as a real estate agent, you think a lot about how you dress, how you look, how you talk to your clients, how you talk to prospective clients. You put a lot of thought into that because you're thinking about your brand and your image and the customer experience. However, when it comes to the online world, there's often a disconnect. All of the care and the thought that you put into your brand in the physical or the people world, you don't know what to do in the online world. This is the way it is in the United States. I suspect that many of you have the same struggle. We don't know how to translate our brand effectively into the online world, and this is a problem. So, what do we do? How do we do this? Well, fundamentally, we need to think first about who you are. Whether you're running a company or whether you're a single real estate agent. Who are you? What is your personality? What is your brand personality? And we actually do this in our work with real estate companies in the United States. We go through this exercise where we try to assign the brand a personality, okay? And these things here, lover, hero, magician, jester, creative, every person, caregiver, ruler, these are called archetypes, brand archetypes. They're actually developed by the famous sociologist and psychologist Carl Jung, okay? But we apply them in business and branding because it's important. Who are you? What is your brand personality? If you don't figure that out first, then you don't have a compass to guide you in your marketing, in your copy, the words you write, your image, the customer experience that you design. So think first about your brand personality. Once you've done that, you need to start with a story. I think Matthew, if you saw Matthew Ferrara, the great speaker who was on before me, he talked a lot about storytelling. Storytelling is so important in marketing and building your brand. If you don't know how to explain yourself to the marketplace, if you can't tell a client or a prospective client why they should do business with you and not somebody else, if you can't explain your purpose and the mission of your business, then you can't really do much beyond that. You're in a very vulnerable place. So start with story. That has to be the first step. And then identity, okay? Appearances do matter. Your brand is not just a logo, but how you look matters, particularly in the digital world. So you have a story, create your brand identity, then design your customer experience. So if a home buyer goes to your website and they have to struggle to find what they need, if your website does not work on the mobile device that they are using, if you're not clear in explaining your value proposition, you're not creating a good experience, okay? You need to design your online user experience thoughtfully. Only after you do those three things should you do any marketing. The quickest way to destroy a business is to do marketing before you've got all these things in order, right? You can actually harm yourself with marketing until you have really done a lot of work on these things. Okay, so that's just a little bit about brands generally. So some principles to think about as you plot your future online. Consistency is very important. Very important. So I Googled RE/MAX. RE/MAX operates throughout Europe, throughout the United States. Very large real estate brand. I Google RE/MAX, do an image search, and what do I get? I get dozens and dozens and dozens of different logos with different colors and different messages. Horrible brand inconsistency. This is brand death. You wouldn't find this with Apple. You wouldn't find this with BMW. You wouldn't find this with Louis Vuitton. Consistency is absolutely essential, particularly on the online world. This is a mess. So let me tell you a little bit of a story that I hope gets this point across. So real estate has a challenge, a problem, and that it is not consistent online. So imagine you're staying at the Ritz. I'm not staying at the Ritz here. I can't afford it. But it's a beautiful hotel, okay? So imagine you're staying at the Ritz. You're having a lovely time, and you're going to have dinner and spend the night, and it's newly remodeled. It's a majestic hotel. And so your expectations are very high. Your chauffeur drives you up, and you get out, and the doorman opens the door, and you're feeling great. I'm at the Ritz. You go inside to the magnificent lobby, and you're treated like a king or a queen. And then you take your key, and you walk down the hall to go to your room full of anticipation, and you're feeling great because you're in this marvelous experience. And then you put your key in the door, and you open the door, and you see that. Okay? I'm not staying there either. I'm staying somewhere in between. My point is this. This problem plagues real estate far too often, right? So you may have a beautiful office. You may drive a beautiful car. You may wear a beautiful suit. You may be the most fantastic real estate agent in all of France. But too often, when your prospective customer goes online, they open the door and they see something like that. So it's a huge problem in the United States. I imagine that it's a problem here. The problem is that dissonance, you're done. Consistency is important through every touch point, whether it's the physical world, whether it's a newspaper ad, and especially online. Consistency matters. Second principle, pay attention to the little things that make a big difference. This is especially true online. I'm going to give you an example. Hopefully the tent doesn't blow over. I'll give you an example from another industry, okay? So, we all recognize this. It's the inside of an airplane. And if you're like me, it inspires a feeling of dread. Flying isn't very pleasant anymore. It's crowded, it's sterile, it's expensive, it's certainly not nice, okay? So every airline does this. Well, one airline, Virgin America, I don't know if they do this on Virgin Atlantic, but in Virgin America, one airline about 7 or 8 years ago said, we're going to change a little thing that makes a big difference to create a better consumer experience. That is the inside of a Virgin cabin. So it's the same airplane, the same number of seats, the same fare, but they changed one little thing. They changed the lights from white to purple. A trivial expense that made a huge difference. Now, I walked into that airplane at 7 in the morning and I feel like I'm in Ibiza, right? It feels like a nightclub, not another horrible airplane. It's a small thing. This is especially important online because it takes a lot of money to remodel your office, but it doesn't take that much money to change something small on your website that makes a big impact. Okay, I'll give you another example. This is a piece of software that I use every day, and it's called Slack. It's for collaboration with teams, so I use it with my coworkers. And every day, this is my desktop, and I open up my computer, and as the software is loading, they show me a little message, and it says, "You're here. The day just got better." That's a small thing. I mean, I've been staring at software for 20 years. I'm cynical, but it makes me feel okay. I feel like this company cares about me. It's just a slight little emotion that I feel that's positive. And I love this software. It costs them nothing to do this. It's a small thing with a big impact. Another example. So my company, we're a brand and marketing agency. We had a conference last year for all of our clients in Portland, Oregon. And we thought, okay, how do we do something small that's just different, right? And that people will talk about. So I thought, well, you go to a conference and you always get handed the same things. You get handed, a pen maybe, or a mouse pad, a mug, something like that. Everybody hands out the same branded materials. So we said, okay, well, we'll hand all our customers a hat with our logo on it. But then we thought, well, what about a nice bandana? Somebody wants to be a little stylish. And then we thought, well, they had just legalized marijuana in the state of Oregon at the time. So we said, we're going to hand everybody rolling papers with our logo on it so they can roll themselves a joint in Portland, Oregon. I did not do this personally, right? The point is different. People talked about it. Right? Little things that get people to feel something, even if it's just amusement about your brand. Think about little things you can do. Okay, tell a story. Matthew talked about this, and I mentioned it a little earlier. Tell a story. Tell a story. Marketing is not just showing a property flyer. It's not just putting that property online. It's explaining to somebody why they should do business with you and why they should care about you and why they should choose you over somebody else. So I'll give you an example. So, and this is an example obviously from outside of real estate. In the United States, the Coca-Cola brand was very dominant in beverages, in drinks, for about 100 years, okay? And Coca-Cola in America represents nostalgia, family, everything that is sweet and sacred and that everybody loves and feels comfortable with. And it was that way for almost 100 years. Well, in the early 1960s, Pepsi Cola decided that they were tired of trying to compete with Coca-Cola. Pepsi had run the same type of advertising for decades, right? They even tried to go a little bit upscale on Coca-Cola. Pictures of affluent people drinking soda pop, drinking Pepsi. So it didn't work. Pepsi only sold about half as much as Coca-Cola did. Coca-Cola was dominant for decades. Pepsi was just imitating the market leader. Well, then something happened. In 1963, a few things happened in America, and they happened, I think, here in subsequent years. But in 1963, youth were taking over the culture. We call them today millennials. You probably hear a lot about millennials, right? These 20-year-old people, these 30-year-old people who are strange creatures we can't understand, right? We're all trying to figure out how to deal with millennials. Well, in the early 1960s, youth were taking over the culture. And they were questioning all of the values that Coca-Cola represented. They were questioning their adults. They were questioning everything that America held sacred. And so the smart people at Pepsi finally said, let's tell a story that taps into this cultural moment. And let's stop trying to do what Coca-Cola does and talk to the marketplace and tell an entirely different story. So what Pepsi did in 1963 was to tap directly into the youth culture, right? They showed pictures of young people, casual, drinking Pepsi. They showed pictures of African American people in advertising, which had never been done before. And they called it the Pepsi generation. They tied into a cultural moment that allowed them to differentiate from the market leader. Within 10 years, Pepsi had achieved parity with Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola now is the #2 brand in America. Pepsi sells more, right? My point, if you follow that, is don't just imitate the market leader. Don't do what everybody else does. Find your own story. You saw this with Apple. I mentioned Apple earlier. The Apple Macintosh launched in the United States in 1984. And they did this in a very dramatic way. They ran a television ad that featured a young woman carrying a sledgehammer into a crowded theater, and on the theater screen was this image out of George Orwell's 1984 of some authoritarian figure talking about computing and droning, and it represented Microsoft and IBM and the cold nature of computers. And she throws the sledgehammer through the screens and it shatters. And that launched the Apple brand in the United States and eventually worldwide, and allowed Apple to tell a different story. Computers weren't just about technology. Computers weren't just about microchips. Computers were about creativity, of thinking differently. They used people like Pablo Picasso, Maria Callas, Gandhi in their advertising. And it connected with people emotionally. People felt something, that they were going to use these devices in order to express themselves as human beings. Apple changed the story. They changed an industry, changed the world. Next principle, and this is important. Remember, in real estate, we are in a people business, not a product business. You sell properties, but you don't own the properties. In many cases, as I understand it, you don't have exclusive listings. There's many people selling a property. Your business is people. It's helping people navigate a complex emotional transaction. However, when I look around at all of the real estate offices, if I look at all the real estate websites, this is Keller Williams, this is the biggest brand in the United States. I go to their website, and what do I see? I see search for homes. Well, there's 1,000 websites where I can find homes. I don't see any people. I see nothing that speaks to me as a human being. I see a way to find a house. Well, there's lots of ways to find a house. They're a people business that is not focusing on people, and that is a mistake, particularly online. I looked around at French real estate agencies before I traveled over here, and there are many really nice websites. This is a particularly beautiful website, but again, there's no people. It's search, find a home, sell your home with us. It's functional. It's not emotional. There's nothing with people. So focus on people. Here's a couple of examples. These are companies that we have worked with in the United States where we we consciously, as a strategy, focused on people. So this is a company in San Francisco, and they show the properties that they have for sale. But what we did was to interview clients of theirs who've either sold their house with them or bought a house with them. And they talked openly and honestly about their transactions, their experience, what made them nervous, what made them joyful, how they appreciated the service that their Red Oak Realty real estate agent gave them. If you read some of these, we could feel our hearts connected to this house, but there was so much drama around it, right? There were so many things you get nervous about. This is what real estate transactions are. So we focused on people. This company has grown 100% in the last 5 years. This is another example of a company, real estate company we worked with. This company works in the suburbs of New York City. And they work in many small towns, very affluent small towns. And so we thought, okay, how do we bring people into this online experience? So we spent 2 months shooting video of residents of these towns. So this woman's explaining what it's like to live in Bronxville, New York. She just lives there. She's not an agent with Houlihan Lawrence, this company. She's a resident, and she's talking to, imagine that the person looking for a place to live goes to this website, okay? There's a human being talking to them about what they can expect. There's a human connection made here. This company's market share has increased 22% over the last 3 years. So in everything that you do, with your brand and your marketing, particularly online, always have in your head this question from this woman. Pretend this woman. Get a picture in your mind of what your customer looks like or what your prospect looks like. And before you do anything online, ask yourself her question, which is, why should I care? Why should I care about your property flyer? Why should I care about your website? Why should I care about what you're doing on Facebook? Because good branding and good marketing is not about you as much as it is about her. Okay, difference, always. Difference is the heart of branding and marketing. Difference is creating a little bit of space between yourself and everybody else in the marketplace. And that's tough because there are thousands and thousands of real estate agents. And looked at from the outside as a consumer, oftentimes they all look the same. They have the same marketing, the same flyers. Their offices look the same. They hand me the same type of business card. They say the same things. It's hard to create difference, but it's very important. So in some cases, it's easy to be different online in real estate. This is a very large discount real estate company in the United States, Redfin. They will sell your house for half the fee that other companies will. So they say that right there. Pay just 1.5%, half the usual fee. It's easy for them to be different because their business model is different. But most of you and most agents in the United States pretty much charge a similar rate. So how do you establish difference? I'll give you a couple of examples. This is a real estate technology company that my firm worked with, and they were a startup. And they did e-signatures and transaction management. So online digital real estate transactions, .loop. And they competed against DocuSign, and you have DocuSign here in France. I think the DocuSign people are out in the exhibit hall. DocuSign is a marvelous company, much larger company. So .loop needed to compete with DocuSign. If you use my other example, DocuSign was Coca-Cola in the 1950s. .loop was Pepsi. So .loop couldn't just compete with DocuSign by saying, we do e-signatures and we do transaction management, and to say the same things. It wouldn't have gotten anywhere. So what did we do? We basically created a new word. And we didn't talk about signatures. We didn't talk about documents. We didn't talk about technology at all. We created a made-up word. It's not even a word in English. People work. Okay? And we focused their entire brand and their entire marketing campaign on people working better together. Created a different story. And this company started 5 years ago, and last year was acquired by Zillow, which is the biggest property portal in the United States, for $110 million. So that's the power of telling a story that's different, being always different, always, always different. Another example, this is a brand that we just created. This brand just launched 2 weeks ago in Seattle, in the United States. And the company was called Windermere, a very large real estate company in the United States, about 9,000 agents. And they wanted to create a new brand that was focused on the very high-end luxury market, properties that were valued at $3 million and above, okay? And they wanted to compete with Sotheby's and Christie's and other established luxury brands. So they came to us and said, create us a new brand from scratch. So this is the logo that we came up with, but as I said earlier, the brand is more than a logo. So we had to think about, how do we make everything about this new brand differently? So it started with typography. We don't use the same fonts, the same typefaces. We don't use the same color palette. Luxury is so often black and white. See, everything's black and white is luxury, right? You just make your website black and it's luxurious, right? So we wanted a very different palette, the colors, to create a different emotion. And so we created materials that look different. Everything from the business card to the marketing flyers look different. So when you handed it to somebody, they had that moment where they paused and they looked at it and they said, it's different. We created an entirely different yard sign. I know you don't use yard signs for every property here, but in the United States, everybody has the same yard sign. It's a white stake and you stick it in front of the house and it's got a sign that swings. So we said, well, let's throw out the model for yard signs and create a yard sign that's made out of iron, right? Totally different, because we had to be different. It looks very nice in front of a huge house. And importantly, then we said, okay, how do we take this brand experience into the digital world? Because in Seattle, where they are, it's a very tech-savvy marketplace. So the brand needs to have a good experience online, particularly on a mobile device. So you'll see here that, you know, everything looks better, the typography. And we said, what if we approached, and this is one of those small, those little things that makes a big difference. What if we just took better pictures of the agents? You go to our real estate website, and usually you see a line of very bad, poorly composed photos of real estate agents. We said, okay, let's make sure that we take beautiful pictures of every agent and not just staring into the camera. Let's actually take a shot with them out in the real world, maybe even a candid shot. So when the user goes there, they're actually looking at people that look like human beings, not statues. We thought, okay, well, how do we display properties differently and in a way that makes people feel something? So most property websites, you go there and there's 10 or 15 photos, and sometimes they're good. Too often they're really bad. And you kind of swipe through them, and you look at the kitchen, and you look at the bathroom, and you look at the backyard, and everything's the same. So we thought, okay, first of all, let's take every photo from a drone, okay? That's where we start. We start with the aerial photo. And then, because, and this is an area outside of Seattle. It's very beautiful, right? We thought, well, let's show the house. It's an amazing house, but let's show the landscape around it, because the house is wonderful, but the best part of this property is the environment in which the house sits. So let's show people the bigger picture. Everything has to be different. Okay, another principle. Don't make me think. And here I'm speaking specifically about the online world, okay? Consumers today are impatient. If they pull out their phone and look for your website or look for the property that you've listed and can't find exactly what they need immediately, you've lost them. If they get to your website and struggle for more than an instant to find the information they need, you've lost them. When you design your website, when you design your app, anything you do online, look at it first through the eyes of your consumer. If you make them think, you've lost. So this is actually the title of a book, and it's been translated into French. You can order it online. It is the best book on online user experience you can buy. It's called Don't Make Me Think. It's a quick read, very straightforward, but it'll change how you think about what you're doing online forever. Okay, another idea related to this. Forget about leads. In the United States, agents are obsessed with leads. I need leads, 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 leads. I'm going to get leads from a portal. I'm going to get leads from Facebook. I'm going to get leads from social media. Leads, leads, leads all day long. It's a sickness, right? I'm going to tell you, forget about leads. Leads aren't how you build a brand. Let me explain that. First of all, chasing leads is not very good business. Now, here's a graph or a slide from the largest real estate brokerage in the world. It's called NRT. They own all of the Coldwell Banker offices in the United States, Century 21, ERA, Sotheby's, and a wonderful company, and they know how to generate leads. In fact, if you see there, in 2015, they generated 1.65 million leads for their agents. And if you follow the number and go all the way down to the bottom, 1.65 million leads resulted in 4,600 closed transactions. These are the smartest people when it comes to online and lead generation in the world, I would argue. You know what the conversion rate is on that? They converted 0.0026% of all leads. So forget about leads when building your brand. First of all, because it's very costly and oftentimes doesn't work. But leads are junk food, right? Leads are the junk food of real estate. We grab them because we need something quick to eat and it makes us feel better temporarily, but it's not nourishing our brands long term. Because a lead, okay, if I could plaster this in every city around the world so every real estate agent could internalize this, I would. Aside from a first-time home buyer, an online lead is nothing more than a client some other agent lost. Think about that. An online lead that comes through Facebook or a portal is most likely a client that some other agent didn't follow up with, didn't build a long-term relationship with, didn't create a real brand connection with. A lead is a client some other agent lost. We have in America, and I imagine it's similar here, we have something that I call the 80-80 problem. So we do research. The National Association of Realtors in the United States surveys consumers every single year. And they ask them the same questions, so you can track consumer sentiment over time. And every year, about 80% of consumers say, at the end of their transaction, I was happy with my real estate agent, and I would use them again. Okay? 80% are happy, which is great news. But then they ask these same people, because they track them over time, who they use next time. 80% use another agent. Okay? That's a brand problem. That's a problem with not creating a long-term connection, and our focus on leads distracts us from this. You build a brand by creating lifelong clients. I bought Apple computers for 30 years for a reason. The result is that the existence of too many real estate agents is like Sisyphus. You all remember the myth of Sisyphus, right? Zeus banned the lesser god Sisyphus to hell for eternally, and his fate was to push a boulder up to the top of the hill, and then once it got to the top of the hill, to watch it roll down. And then he would go up and push it up again. For eternity. It's a horrible existence, right? Camus wrote a whole essay on the myth of Sisyphus, right? It's a horrible existence. So what real estate agents do is they get a lead, and they push that lead up to the top of the mountain, close the transaction, and then they start again at the bottom, right? Don't think short-term when you're thinking about your brand. Leads create short-term thinking. Finally, be flexible. So I think about this stuff every day in my work, but I could be totally wrong about everything I just told you. I never thought Donald Trump could be president, right? I may be wrong about everything I just told you about technology and real estate and marketing. And the reason I'm wrong is because everything is changing so quickly. So you need to be flexible and keep on top of trends, because your brand is going to need to go wherever the consumer goes. It's almost like we're living in a surrealist painting, right? Where everything is just changing. You know, our whole notion of time and space and how we interact with other people in the world and how we interact with information. It's a very strange world out there. It feels very disorienting at times. So we have a device in the United States called Alexa. And Alexa is very popular. I have one in my house. It's this little device. And they're in millions of homes in the United States. I'm sure you will have them here soon. Amazon makes them. And you speak to Alexa in the machine. You say, Alexa, order me a pizza. Alexa, order me a taxi. Alexa, what's the weather today? Alexa, I'm out of laundry detergent. Please order me more laundry detergent. Alexa, play me any song you can imagine. So my point here is that humans, we are interacting with computers in the digital world in ways that were unimaginable even a year ago. Forget about keyboards and mice, and forget about fingers and touching mobile devices. You're going to have to deal with consumers interacting with you and your brand in ways we can't even imagine now. Think about virtual reality. This is a very disturbing picture. So that's Mark Zuckerberg. He's the founder of Facebook. And Facebook has invested heavily in virtual reality. And so here he is at a press event. He's got all these press people strapped into virtual reality. And this is booming right now. You see some of it out there on the exhibit floor. And what it means is that our perception of what the world is like, and in particular, our sense of location, real estate's rooted in location, is it not? Our sense of, our ability to be transported from here to somewhere else in a eerily realistic way is ballooning right now. So things are changing very quickly. You're going to have to interact with clients in a virtual reality very soon. Okay? More strange stuff. So now we have to connect. When I traveled from the United States. I don't have my mobile carrier with me, so I'm trying to find Wi-Fi all the time. I'm always looking for internet. It's tough. Well, Google's working on a project called Project Loon, where they basically put up high-altitude balloons around the world, and we will have internet perpetually. We'll never be without internet. So if you think your customer, and millennials, are connected now and obsessed with the internet, we haven't seen anything yet. This is another project from Google. So Google is investing in this, weaving the internet into our clothes. So you'll have to reboot your sweater in the not too distant future, right? The internet, we will literally become the network. So it's a little scary, maybe, it's a little exciting, maybe, depending on how you look at it. But my point is, the world around us is changing. The world for you and your brands and your businesses is changing very swiftly. Keep your eye on it and be flexible. Okay. If you would like the slides, mostly my slides are just pictures, but if you would like the slides, you can download the slides here. And you can get them and think about them. But that's all I have for you. I want to thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to speak with you.